The following interview with Cliff Richard was taken at Kingdom Live in 1979.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cliff Richard. Hi. I came out best, didn't I? Cliff, fourth week number one,
Yeah,
21st anniversary.
I know.
Like the good old days, isn't it?
I'd like everyone to know, 21 years, makes me sound really old, but of course I was a child star.
You went off to Portugal. You were what, number 14 when you were on holiday?
Yeah, I used to ring home every Tuesday, because Tuesday mornings we get the message at the office, at my office, as to where the, chart positions are. And, when it got to 2, actually, I thought, well, that's it, mate, that's fine for me. Because, in fact, 21 years ago, I released my first record, and that got to number 2, and I thought, well, at least I can say that I'm doing what I did when I first started. So when it got to number 1, I thought, well, now it's number 1. I'd like it to be there for a long time.
So you enlisted a lot of prayer backing.
Well, actually, a lot of people willed it for me. I must say, I kept getting messages from groups and fellowships and like saying, we were really right behind it all the way. And I thought, well, he certainly did the trick this time, because it was quite fantastic.
I know that Bill's mother, Mamie, who lives with you, for 2 days just received telegrams, sort of almost morning, noon and night.
I know, she's expecting payment now.
Okay, so it's number 1. You're obviously pleased.
Yeah.
Second week, third week, fourth week. How do you feel now?
Well, I feel terrific, actually, particularly as my album got released, and that's, I think you won't know about this till next week, but it will be number 3 next week, because they have the charts, they have it way, they've got, they work the album charts for some unknown reason 1 week in advance, so they let us know this week what it's going to be next week, which is a bit ridiculous. I can't see the point, but anyway, I've let you into a secret now.
So if we go to the Moody Blues record shop this week or next week, we can get the record.
Yeah, and also, the interesting thing is, isn't it funny? It's really strange, because after all these years, my album is number 3, the single, of course, is number 1, and the Shadows album is number 6. The String Hits album? I can't quite get with it, I think. I don't know. When I think we're all past it, we're obviously not.
You used to have...
Let's get this whole age thing out of it. I don't think age has got anything to do with it anymore. I got a letter this morning, and it was terribly flattering. Cliff, you're so sexy, and you've got a wonderful figure. And she spoiled it all by saying, for a man of your age. I really thought,
I'll let you into a well-known secret. He's 38 in a few days' time, so there we are.
Weeks. No, October it is.
Is it October?
Yeah.
Is that right? Well, it's a few...
Yes.
39, is that right?
Am I 39? Oh.
He asked me to say 38, actually.
No, I've been telling other people, I always tell people, from next year, I think I'll start telling people I'm 40. That means I can be at that number for 2 years.
You see the deception that goes on in the show business world. Cliff, be good, I think, if you sang to us your number 1 hit, We Don't Talk Anymore. I did wonder about it, because I didn't really think it was a very good sort of title for a song related to a conference which has to do with fellowship and communication.
Well, I don't think it's a very good idea, actually, either, because on the record, it's all polysynthesizers and everything. They're things that sound like organs that go... They're all, and so I'm not quite sure if I can actually do this. Well, I'll sing as much of it as I can. You'll have to wait till I get my band together. I don't think I'll dare tell them, actually. I forgot there's a key change on the falsetto. It really throws me.
You had the immediate prayers of 2,000 people.
Well, they didn't work.
Right. Cliff, you're here as an entertainer. You're here as friends. But we're also here as brothers of a worldwide Christian fellowship. And of course, most of the folk who've come here know that. Now, a lot of us turn to Christ in moments of crises.
Yeah.
Now, was that true for you?
Well, no, it depends on what you mean by the word crises. we all have different reasons for finding a need in ourselves, and different things lead up to that. I mean, I would say it was a crisis in that, having attained my heart's desire. I mean, when I was 14 or 15, I wanted to sing. But you know, when you're going to school, you can't exactly tell your teacher you want to be a singer, because everybody will just laugh, because it's so difficult. And when I finally, becoming one. When I finally did it and got there, I really thought that there was nothing else I could ask of life. I mean, I was having the most fantastic time, you know. I mean, the Shads and I were, if we weren't number one, one of us was, and if none of us were on, we were 2, 3, 4, or 5 or something, and we were touring the country, and it was, people were screaming at us. It was fantastic. And it was really, really good. So for like 2.5, 3 years, pardon? Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yes, the table.
We'll just talk loudly.
Cliff, take this one here.
That one's... try pulling the plug.
How are we doing, Steve?
Oh, there you go. The devil does try, but he...
I ought to say, this hasn't happened all week.
Well, where was I? Oh, yeah, I was saying that having had 3 or maybe 4 years of incredible success, it really amazed me that when the Shadows and I would come off stage, we'd go back to the hotel, and we'd start talking about things, and it amazed me how suddenly the fact that the hour on stage was really exciting. We had a great time. I suddenly found myself thinking, well, so what? I mean, I'm sure everyone else has been through this. And so the crisis in my life was that I couldn't understand why I was doing something that most people want to do. Most people want to be singers or actresses or actors or dancers or whatever. And there I was doing it, and yet I wasn't feeling like this is it. And I always feel that, you know, when you're going through life, I mean, regardless of what kind of job you have, because I know that some people do jobs that aren't very, but they should feel anyway. Do you know what I mean? I mean, so that it really upset me and disturbed me that I wasn't feeling satisfied. So what happened was that I found that conversations were going sex, politics, and religion, and well, not necessarily in that order.
With you and the Shadows.
That's right, always. And I thought, well, wait a minute. The religion thing kept on cropping up, and I thought, well, why not chase that? And Christianity was on my doorstep. I sang in a church choir when I was 6, 7 years old. And I went to church until I was 14 when I couldn't understand it anymore, and I said to my mum and dad, I'm not going. So that church, I mean, that was there in the background. So I thought, well, let's look into it. And what I did was I looked into it, asked a whole lot of questions, and was amazed that really I knew nothing about it at all, although I had all sorts of childhood memories, and that people who call themselves Christians actually did have rational answers and seemed to be satisfied the way I thought I ought to be, because the people I knew were sort of doing what I would have called then boring old jobs, like being teachers or estate agents or something like that, you know. I don't think that anymore. But at that time I thought, how can they be satisfied with what they've got? And then it slowly dawned on me that every time they talked about what they really had, Jesus would crop up. It would be the fact that they said, we've got Jesus, so therefore nothing else is as important as that, so we don't place any greater importance on anything else. Jesus is our prime thing in life.
What was your first response? I mean, when people talked about Jesus rather than about religion and the Bible?
I must admit, having gone through with Jehovah's Witnesses and some Jewish people as well, it was the first time I'd heard people speak about Jesus in a sort of real way, as though they were absolutely sure that he still existed. So I suppose I was a little bit bemused by it, because I'd never been an atheist. I'd always believed that there was a God, but there'd come a time in my life when I thought, well, if he's around, he's obviously got nothing to do with us down here, so let's just believe he's there and leave it at that. So to hear people talking about Jesus and people saying that you could actually relate to God because of Jesus still being alive, I mean, they triggered off a lot of bells, because you see, I'm sure this would be right in saying this, that throughout man's history, a person has longed to touch God and relate to God. And suddenly Jesus comes along and says, well, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And no man will ever come to the Father, that's God, except he comes through me. It doesn't say no man will ever get to the Father. He actually said there's a way of doing it. And all these things kind of triggered bells in my mind, and I thought, well, I certainly came to a point in my life where I believed things about Jesus. I certainly believed he existed. I believed that he was the Son of God. I believed that he died a horrific death so that I needn't fear it anymore. And I believe, and if I was cornered, I've said this many times, but I hope you'll forgive me if you've heard it before, that if I was forced to say what I thought was the most important thing to believe in, I think the resurrection. Because what would we be doing here if Jesus was just another dead philosophy? It doesn't make sense, really. People don't meet about dead philosophies, not often anyway. And when you think that people still meet every Sunday, and what's more, within the week as well for Bible studies and fellowship, all because they believe and know for themselves that Jesus is alive. So that was the one area that got me. And you see, when you think about it now, I mean, there isn't really, that's one of the most fascinating and attractive things about Christianity, because there isn't another philosophy or another religion that offers you that at its center. I mean, Buddha died. Muhammad died. Nobody claimed anything else for them other than they were men of some kind of greatness and some kind of wisdom. But even having mentioned Buddha, I heard Billy Graham say that apparently just before Buddha died, it's claimed that he said, "I'm still searching for the truth." And Jesus says, "I am the truth." So all these things, I mean, I'm putting it into a nutshell, but I mean, all these things took about 3 years to get straight in my head. And I think that the final step, the final thing that I did was to say, "Okay, Jesus, I know you're there. I mean, I need you in my life."
Had you prayed much before that? Or was it sort of driving along in the car?
Well, yes and no. You know, I mean, I think most of us who have a conversion story to tell know that before we were converted, we believed in God, you know, and if things were going wrong, you'd say, "Oh dear, you know, if you're up there, help me." I mean, that kind of thing. But it's only in latter years now, as I've been a Christian, that one realizes that prayer isn't just to sort of shout for help. It's a communication with God, so that you can tell him how great you feel, or how bad you feel, for that matter.
But in that 3 years that you were seeking, searching, reading books, talking to folks, was there any prayer? You prayed hard then?
I prayed hard then because I kept saying to myself, well, I know that God's there, and I'm really looking for him, and he must know, if he is God, that I'm looking for him. So, you know, please help me find you. I mean, I think that's one of the things that comes through when you're really, truly searching. You suddenly think, I'm actually looking to relate to this incredible being. And so the next thing to do is to say, "God, please help me find you." I think that happened a lot in my... And of course I had people praying for me. The strange thing is I met people... I was only a Christian for about a year when I went to the North London Keswick thing, you know? And I went then, I was all terrified and everything, and they asked me if I'd sing something, and I sang something, and I said about half a second's monologue, and leapt off the stage. And afterwards, some students came to me and they said, "Oh, brother, we're so happy that you're a Christian. We've been praying for you for ages." And I sort of went, "Oh, thank you." And afterwards, I was really upset. I said, "How dare they pray for me?" I don't know. You know, I was really upset. And it's not until a couple of years after I was a Christian that I suddenly realized that that's the extent of people's concern. If they can actually be bothered to put your name on their list or whatever, and spend time in their day, when they're probably busy doing a lot of other things, to actually pray for you as an individual, you should be really grateful. So I say that in case people are upset if they know that someone's praying for them. It's one of the most, I think, wonderful showings of concern that people can offer you.
So you didn't get everything sorted out in that 3-year period, and then it was all sorted out, and now you are a Christian, full stop?
No, well, obviously, I'd sorted out enough for me to want to partake of it. A friend of mine says that you don't have to commit intellectual suicide to become a Christian, because a lot of people think that we don't rationalize what we believe in, and of course that's totally untrue. But of course, having become a Christian and having begun getting involved in Christian things, I mean, being with Christian friends. The funny thing is I didn't go to church for at least 6 months because I couldn't figure what the church had to do with my... I don't know if any of you saw...
Here we know, yeah.
No, well, you know... No, I think it's a common feeling amongst people who are outside the church, who have an experience. I tell you what, did any of you see the Billy Graham film I did called Two a Penny? 2, 3. Anyway, for those of you that didn't, there was a fantastic scene in it, and the girl was converted. My girlfriend was converted, and she says something. She says, "I know what Jesus has to do with me, but I'm not quite sure what the church has got to do with my life." And maybe that's a fault. I mean, I'm sure there is a fault to a great degree of the church. But you see, after about 6 months of feeling, well, you know, I know that Jesus is alive. My friends, they know the same. We're all in this together. After about 6 months, it struck me that the reason why church is important is because, well, I mean, I need to go and be with other people who believe as I believe. I need to be able to worship. And so church became important, and I started to go to church after that. And then, of course, you start to realize how much you need the church to learn.
Right, can we just go back one pace? Because my sister's here tonight, who 2 years ago gave her life to the Lord and became a Christian. Met her earlier on. But I can remember standing in our living room about 2.5 years ago, and she had probably come through creation and through books and through talking to me and so on to intellectually agree, but she said, I feel that there's a pane of glass between me and what you are in. I feel on the outside. Now, you're not talking about a set of morals to live up to, a standard to live by. She actually came to a moment when that glass went. Was there a moment for you when suddenly you moved from the outside to in, or was it a gradual process?
No, I think it was a moment in time, and then it's like as though there was a chink in the glass and you slipped through, but you're still standing with your back to it. In other words, you haven't actually gone very far into it. So that I think that the moment, I can't give you the exact date, but I remember lying on my bed one night and just having got through asking questions for week in, week out. I don't know how I kept those friends because I was pretty belligerent. And I remember someone had said to me, read the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 20. It's ever so famous. That's why he probably said find it. And it was Jesus saying, behold, I stand at the door and I knock. And whoever opens the door, I will come in. Well, I remember lying on that bed and thinking, well, I certainly haven't opened any doors, although I can relate it entirely and completely to your sister, when in fact intellectually, yes, I did believe all these things about Jesus, and yet that was the scripture that gave me the key to open the door. Because I remember thinking, well, I know you're there, but oh right, if you're knocking on my door, I don't even know how to open the door, but I'd like you in my life. Now, I think that's the moment that the glass door went like that, and I stepped inside.
Right.
But you see, quite often people stop with their backs against the door, expecting miracles to suddenly take place, to be elevated to the boss's job. But people do expect miracles to happen instantly, when in point of fact they've missed the biggest miracle of it all, the very fact that you've actually taken the step. It's 1979. People are into sex and drugs, they're into discos, they're into all these hip things, man. If Jesus can enter your life in 1979, that, for me, is the initial miracle that you should stand back and say, I'm amazed I actually did it. 2 friends of mine, members of my band, 2 singers, in fact, people have prayed for them as they prayed for all my band over the years. They finally were converted within a space of about 18 months or a year of each other. And I stand amazed before you, because although one of them I thought, Stu, in fact, those of you know, he's the one that looks like the Robertsons.
Gollywog.
Yeah. He was always a very gentle sort of guy, and he'd ask questions, and he obviously was very keen and wanted to understand what I believed in and what Christians believed in. And so when he was converted, I thought, oh, great. But in a way, I thought, well, I'd almost expected it. But when John Perry was converted, John's all, hey, wait, great, E. And then suddenly, he's baptized in Walton. Admittedly, when he came up, he went... But I couldn't, I must admit, I get very weepy at baptisms, but I thought myself, this is incredible to think that this guy, who's told me to my face what he thinks sometimes of me, everything.
Your faith and...
Yeah, the lot. Should suddenly...
Faith, not face.
Should suddenly...
Faith, not face.
You're right. Anyway, now it's fantastic. I said to him on Sunday when he was baptized, do you realize now we've got a prayer group in our band? It's a miracle. It's the first step you take, and it is probably the biggest miracle that will take place in your life, that you, with all these pressures around, should actually commit yourself to something you cannot see or touch. You can't take a blackboard and say 2 + 2 = God. You just can't do it. And to think that you've committed yourself to that, I find it miraculous that it still happens. But that's the reality of Jesus. It does still happen, and people can't knock that away.
For those who may feel that all this is sort of absolutely tremendous and knocking them out, you are actually saying that you've received Christ, he actually lives in you, and in some measure at least has transformed you, and is doing that now. That you're not just believing, but something that's happened inside you.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, I heard someone say that a man with an argument doesn't stand a hope against a man with an experience. And I stand before you purely with an experience. There's, a few arguments. But, it's the experience that you're mentioning that makes it so real. I find it sometimes very hard. I go to, say, a college or a university, and students can be really tough. And they're no fools. They're on the brink of academic success, most of them. So they know where their heads are as far as their books are concerned. And they want to know why you believe what you believe. And sometimes I feel I get really tight around the throat, thinking, how am I going to explain? How does one explain that Jesus is alive? Apart from saying it, how do you show it? And the answer, in point of fact, is it's almost impossible to show it like as you meet someone, because it takes a lifestyle to show it. I mean, you can see it in people's lives when you see them regularly, and you say, this is this, and oh yes, that's right, and he's behaved exactly like we would expect a Christian to behave. But that takes time. So sometimes, and that's another thing, that made me very conscious of the fact that you're not on your own. How can you stand in front of a whole group of strangers, telling them what you believe about Jesus, and then read a letter, say, a year later saying, you really helped me, I wasn't converted then, I've had letters like this, but a year later, you caused a spark of interest, and I was converted. Now, that brings us to another whole section of...
A warden of one of the biggest mental hospitals in London said to Billy Graham years ago that if my patients knew they could be forgiven and the guilt of their past lives removed from them, 2/3 of them could walk out of here tonight. And probably there are a lot of people that feel, well, that's okay for Cliff and these people here who've had a different life to me, but I'm really not good enough for God. There are things in my life that are mucked up. In terms of forgiveness and guilt and so on, could you just explain a bit about that, Cliff? What went on with you?
I always think that you're onto a fairly good thing if someone says that to you, because, that's one of the basic, that's the beginnings of understanding what you're really about. If you can actually say that there is something wrong in your life, that you're ashamed of, that you're not good enough for God, I would want to say, great speech, and it's based on truth, because there are things wrong in your life, you're not good enough for God, but you can't leave it there, because if that's true of all of us. So how come people are Christians? And I think the answer is very simple. Those of us that become Christians suddenly realize that God, if he's a God at all, is a God of total forgiveness. He's a God of total everything, actually, but at least he's a God of total forgiveness. And if you're saying, which is what you are saying, if you're standing there saying it's not for me because I'm too bad, you're saying that your badness is so bad that God's goodness is not greater than it. And that is not true. Otherwise, what kind of God is it who can't deal with everything that you've got in your minds? Of course he can. So at the beginning of one's relationship with a person who felt like this, one would want to say, but we're talking about this great God, and it's good that you understand that there's something wrong, but it can be put right, but only he can forgive it. And what's more, forget it. You may never forget it, but he'll forget it. So, it would be I would want to say that you wouldn't want to eradicate the guilt, because I guess we should feel guilty, although guilt can be a very destructive thing. To start with, that's how God gets at us. He makes us feel uneasy about whatever we're doing. It's whether or not we want to get forgiven of it that counts. Because obviously, if you become a Christian, it's not all a bed of roses, is it? You all know, a lot of you know, that it then means making a stand in many, many directions, unpopular stands. I know from my own point of view that for many years, being a Christian in show business, a press man said to me that, he said, do you realize people laugh behind your back? It really upset me for a while, and then I suddenly thought, well, if they're laughing behind my back, I can't see them, so it doesn't matter.
Right. That's a good intro, actually, to my next question, because when you became a Christian, there's a story that's going around that says you almost gave up show business and became a school teacher. Is that true?
It is. You're the first one to get it right. Usually they say you were going to become a monk. But there are all sorts of... I became a Christian, and I was hysterical about the whole idea. And then I realized that all my friends were, well, as I said, they were teachers and doing regular jobs that had nothing to do with show business, and they had a time, it seemed to me, to be involved in directly Christian activities. They were running Bible classes and being very much actively involved in the church, and I thought, wait a minute, I feel one of them now that I've asked Jesus to enter my life, but I'm not really one of them because I'm not behaving like one of them, and I'm not able to do it. So I thought, well, obviously the answer is I've got to get out of show business. And I made the mistake, really, of calling the press together and telling them that I was going to leave. Now, I didn't tell them when. I just said that my plans are to leave when my commitments were through. Obviously, I'm contracted sometimes a year ahead. My record contract, I know, was still had at least 4 or 5 years to run. So I had to have made records anyway, regardless of whether I ever performed them again. And so I made the mistake of telling them that, because when I had taken the step, I told my manager that I was going to give up. And he surprised me by saying, do what's best for you. I thought he was going to kick up a fuss. But he said that, and I thought, right. And I made all the steps. I even went to a teacher's training college, and I told him that I had O-levels, and that I had no qualifications. He said, no, it's all right. Your best qualification is that you want to be here. He said, most people here don't want to teach, which surprised me at a teacher's training college. No, it's a real eye-opener. Then I took an O-level in RI, which I passed.
You actually took that and passed it?
Yeah. I was... Well, it was quite good, wasn't it, really? A man of my age. Anyway, I made all these plans. And Gerald, this is it. Funny, everything you go through ought to be a lesson, and most of the times, as far as I can see, they are. Because what I learned later, there's one thing I forgot to do. I didn't really sit down and say, God, what am I going to do? What's the best thing to do? I used to think to myself, obviously I want to do what's right for God, but I never really thought of really praying hard about it. But then I was rather a young Christian, so I was very immature, and I'm making excuses. But it was when I'd made all the steps necessary to give up the business, that's when suddenly Norrie Paramore said to me that, wait a minute, that I ought to make a gospel album. And I'd never been asked to do that before, so I thought, well, okay, I'll make a gospel album, and then I'll go. Then I met up with the Billy Graham organisation. This happened about the same time, and they said, we'd like you to be in a film. There weren't many Christian actors, so I got the job. And I thought, well, I'll do the film. And then I got offers for TV and radio and gospel concerts, of course, and I thought, wait a minute. And then I had to sit back and say, is God actually telling me something? And I believe now that he definitely was. So I thought all these doors had opened up. And I mean, I can only stand before you and say, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that he opened those doors and got me to stay. But I've got to be just as honest if he closes those doors. And I would take that as a sign that my usefulness within show business is over. And I would have to be prepared to leave it. I mean, mind you, it might be a good time to go at number one, mightn't it?
Absolutely.
But the doors seem to be wide open. And so that's why I said I learned another lesson, because God has plans for us. And he wants us to involve ourselves with him. He wants us to say, God, please lead me the right way. I want to do what's right, but he wants us to talk to him. And I remember that I just never did all that. And probably that's why I made the mistake of calling press together, and it was very embarrassing.
How difficult was it initially when, having decided not to become a teacher and you'd follow your career, what you're naturally gifted to do, how difficult was it among Christians, never mind those who didn't know the Lord, to follow that through? Because no one in this country had done it, had they, in your generation?
No, they hadn't, no. Here he goes, my generation. No, they hadn't.
Just getting the sniff back.
They hadn't done it, and I suppose it did create a problem in many Christians' minds. And I did get a lot of flack and quite a lot of aggressive mail. But of course that's changed. And I think, again, we're all growing. Not only was I a young Christian, but Christians had a new situation to deal with. I mean, I was their new situation. And I got letters saying, you can't be in show business, it's sinful and all that. I thought to myself, that can't be true. I mean, the world is sinful, yes, the world is secular. Right. We're isolated cases of Christianity, maybe one in the whole street. And does God want us to all go and be in exactly the same job? Is there a holy job for me? Is there a holy job for anybody? Even vicars say they're sinners, So, I mean, there doesn't seem to be obviously, there wasn't a place that we could go to and just be separate from everything. So I stuck with what I believed to be right and what I felt, because I don't suppose people had realized that God had opened all these doors to me. It took a couple of years before it threaded through the grapevine that I was able to talk at universities and colleges, that I was giving gospel concerts, that I was talking on the radio about what I believed, that I was doing interviews on television, that records would be coming out, and films. And it took a while, but it's taken a while, and I must say it's been fantastic recently, because I do feel now that there's a definite move to supporting people like myself. I know at Millmead, where I attend, that there's 4 people that I meet with as often as I can. We try to make it once a month. It doesn't always work out that way because of my schedule. And I know that I can go there and I can say to them, look, this is worrying me. I've had this dreadful write-up in the paper, and it's really taken sleep out of me for 3 days. And I've got this kind of support. And they pray for me regularly. And I know that within the church now, there's a different feeling towards people like myself. And really what we've got to do is say, it's God's art form. And Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music, to me, is a great rock and roll song, because it's saying exactly what we should be saying. Does rock and roll belong to the devil? If so, let's leave it to him. But of course it doesn't. Everything belongs to God. Everything of creation. The devil will take as much as we'll let him have. So I say that we've got to really get down to seriously praying Not that we want, a famous person to become a Christian, but that famous people need Jesus just as much. I was going to say almost said more, but they don't need him anymore. They need him just as much as you do. And I think it's time that we said, we're not likely, because the church doesn't seem to touch up with people like myself. And I guess it's going to be down to everyday people just praying hard that somehow or another God will get through to important men and women. And it's important that they find Jesus for themselves, though, not only for how well they'll be used afterwards, but for the fact that they need salvation.
Right. Next month, you're 39. I thought I'd bring that up again. Next month, you're 39.
Go off, people.
Are there things, Cliff, as an entertainer and as a Christian, that you would like to do? Are there things in your heart you'd really like to do to...
Well, obviously, my work as a Christian is tempered to a great extent by my success as a pop singer. I mean, I know, for instance, that if you go to a church, I mean, I've been to many churches and they say, oh, because you're coming, we're going to be full, and then we'll only have about 50 people on the following Sunday. So I know that my success helps me to present Jesus to crowds that normally don't get a chance to hear. So for my career's sake, there's lots I'd like to do. I mean, obviously, I want to keep going on recording. I mean, there's no end to that because the challenge is always there. And if you've only got to listen to Capital or Radio 1 or anything, and you'll see that amongst the rubbish, there are some fantastic bands coming up. Really good ones. So that means that if I'm going to stay ahead at all, I've got to be listening and thinking, I've got to keep up with all of this, and I want to keep up with it all. I'd like very much to do a stage musical, a rock and roll stage musical. I mean, I'd like a stage musical that's got songs like I Don't Like Mondays, We Don't Talk Anymore, Devil Woman, Miss You Nights, all those kind of songs that normally singers like myself grab to put on LPs. If you go to a show, you might like one or two of the songs, but the rest you forget, don't you? And it would be great to have a show that's full of great rock and roll songs. And so that would just lead me on to say that would, I suppose, if that was to happen, it would extend my Christian ministry by quite a great deal of time. And that again is never ending. I mean, it never really stops, because as soon as you've been and spoken to one group, you realize that you've only scratched the surface. So therefore your ambition is to talk to as many people,
Right.
to be with as many people as possible.
Cliff Richard.